Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've had a really enjoyable and informative morning. This afternoon we start with another plenary speech, and I'm really pleased to welcome three of our own stars within the institution. Karen Barton, our Director of Learning and Teaching, Paul Hudson, User Experience Development Manager, and Greg Bowie, User Experience Development Team Manager and Learning Environment Project Manager. As many of you know, Paul was instrumental in the design of StudyNet and has been now instrumental in the development of our new online learning environment. Karen chairs our steering group for the online learning environment, and Greg project manages that. So they're in a prime position to be able to tell us about our journey, where we've come from and where we're going to.
Afternoon, everyone. There's going to be three of us presenting, so we're going to be rushing around between each other and passing the book all the time, literally passing the book. And because the tag is always learning, Karen set me and Greg a task of setting you all a quiz and using Paul everywhere, which we've never used before. So improving our digital capabilities and developing ourselves personally, and obviously not falling over. So let's move the slide on. So we're going to ask you some questions. I'm going to put on Paul everywhere in a second. But we thought we'd give you a brief history of StudyNet to start with, and why we did it, and why we're kind of moving away from it. So I'll start off, then Greg will take over about how we're moving away from StudyNet and what we're developing in the future. Karen will then give you an update on some of the stuff we're thinking about learning analytics, and then I'll come back with kind of the potential future long term. Could you put up the laptop, please? So I'm not the only one doing some learning. If you've not used Paul everywhere before, we're going to set you just 4 questions to do on how long StudyNet's been around. So you can see the URL at the top, paulev.com/paulhudson771. If you can access that on your phone or on your tablet or laptop, and just answer a simple question: when was StudyNet released? Was it 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, or 2003? Some of you will have been around at the time. I don't remember it now. It's in a long distance past. I do want to check myself, but I'll just open it up now. So everyone's learning, so we open it through this one, and everyone should now be able to vote. Yep, we've got some answers coming in. So, 2001's popular. 2000, 1999. Is everyone finished? Shall we stop it? I'll give you the answers in a minute. So at the moment, 2000's the popular answer, 1999. So 1999 and 2000. So can you remember that? So we click lock, and then we click next. Always learning. Always remember, we're always learning. It's important that we always learn. I think Karen's put us down for a fail, but we're above it. We can rise to the challenge. Now, one of the things that you might have seen is StudyNet's been around for a long time, which means we've delivered a lot of modules. A lot of modules. So any idea how many modules we've delivered over that period of time that I'll give you the answer to in a minute? 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, or 70,000 modules. In other words, quite a lot. 50% of you think 50,000 modules. Right, let's close that one. I'll give you the answers again in a minute. Let's lock it and switch that one off. Next one. How many submissions were made to StudyNet in 2006? Can anyone remember 2006 in the first place? I was literally going through lots of old documents for GDPR and was coming up with lots of facts for this presentation. Including the original steering group committee. In fact, I can see some people in here, people who are involved in some of the early developments. And this was one of the facts I came out with, which was semester 2006. So people think 41,000. That's a lot, not 51,000. Let's lock that one. And the final question, no, we've lost one. Didn't shut it. think we've lost one of the questions. No, this one's been done. We've done this question. No, there's a question gone. Okay. Always learning, always failing. We can rise above the fails. So can you put the slides back on again, please? And I'll just move you on to the answers and the question we missed. Right. So if you're not aware, this was a trick question, the first one. StudyNet was actually released in 2000, but the VLE, the Managed Learning Environment, was 2001. I'll come to the difference in a few minutes. How many modules have been released? 70,000. 70,000 in that period of time. It's nearly 17 years now. That's a lot of modules, about 5,000 a year. Some years more, some years less. A lot of modules. A lot of students have used this system. And then a lot of submissions, 51,000. But that's nothing compared to where we went to. So even by semester year 2001, there was a national survey of how many people were doing submissions. And we'd done 92,000 in semester A. The only people bigger than us were Open University. So we've been at scale for a long time. And since 2013, we've taken 1.4 million submissions. It's a lot of submissions. So StudyNet's being used by you lot a lot. So why are we moving away from it? Well, I'll give you a bit of history, and then you'll probably understand why. So we developed StudyNet off the back of a lot of other work. And there's some colleagues in here who will recognize some of this. So if I'll kind of talk you through this. This was the University of Hertfordshire in 1990s through to early 2000. We did this thing called computer-aided learning. Remember that phrase? It's gone. Because what it was a lot of investment in a lot of technology that not a lot of it's used anymore. So a lot of good stuff here was produced by the university from something called the Teaching Learning Technology Project on the left-hand side, which I was involved with in '95, through to stuff that LTDU, which was my team, and environmental sciences, engineering were doing. All of this is gone. Why? Because it's very content heavy, and content is expense. And rethinking learning for computers actually requires a lot of investment, unless you leave the person in there, you, the teacher. So that's what we did. We found, through trial and error, that a lot of the projects had these support environments built for them, and these worked. These continued to work after we'd left the project with the academics. It became obvious that actually if we gave the university an environment where you could just collaborate and use your classroom teaching, and this supported the classroom teaching, that actually this would work. So we decided to build one. Being the university, we actually hadn't got time to do that. We already had existing projects. All these projects came through the Learning Teaching Committee, which is kind of Karen's fund now. We already had projects to do. We couldn't do it. So we basically had to rework existing projects to prepare for StudyNet. So what we did is, in the interim, we thought about all the resources the university then had and how we could put them into an intranet. And this was the first version of StudyNet. So anyone who got 2000 and who remembers this, well done, because I forgot this myself. And this kind of brought Students' Union, discussion forums, a lot of social aspects together and kind of formed part of the blueprint of StudyNet. But there was a second product. This was one of the projects in biosciences, which was to simulation workshop that we were going to produce online. And we took a version of, well, we built a version of StudyNet early that summer. We knew we had a project that needed this online environment, but we built it so it could be used for StudyNet. And that, in the left-hand, right-hand side, that thing at the bottom there, that's basically the StudyNet prototype that only a few of us know about. And this was the first version. Clearly influential, because if you walk into the LRC, you will see the colours clearly had a long-lasting impact on staff. So this was the very first version of StudyNet, and as you can see, it provided a portal, calendars, all the kind of tools that later were provided by Google, we initially provided. And then as Google and people like that provided them for you, we decided, well, let's drop them from StudyNet and concentrate on other things. But that's the first version of StudyNet. It had to work with Netscape 3. And if you don't know what Netscape is because you're too young, that's what Mozilla is, and that's what Firefox is, and that's what it's really old technology. And after the first year, we had a bet, a little internal bet within the department, that no one would use it. was only 5p bet. I didn't think the usage would go very high, and I also had bets on which skills would be best and worst. And I bet that law wouldn't do very well, and law came out top with 78% of students engaging. So, what do I know? But clearly we did something right, because in 2005, the institutional audit came in, looked at what we were doing and went, you're doing a good job. You've got blue, you've got a VLE, you've got high engagement, the sector hasn't got this, so you're doing a good job. So where do we go wrong? That's the question. What we were starting to hear, even at this early stage, was feedback from students about they couldn't find things. And then when we went to look, often there was inconsistencies across the programme in terms of the way StudyNet was used. And we'd always shied away from providing or encouraging any kind of guide as to how you should use StudyNet. And that's probably where we went at fault. We're at fault. But, we learn these things. But we had to do something about it. We could keep tweaking StudyNet, keep changing its interface, keep making it shinier. But ultimately, we had to kind of go back to fundamentals, listen to what students really wanted from an online learning environment. And that's where I'll hand over to Greg.
Thank you, Paul. So, as Paul said, StudyNet had really become embedded in the culture of the university since early 2000. But in 2013-14, we decided to take a look at StudyNet and its deliverables and really what the university needed going forward and to address some of these concerns that were being voiced by both staff and students. Let me skip past, we'll come back to Poll Everywhere with some of these questions in a second. But what we did was we undertook quite an extensive consultation exercise that lasted about 18 months with both staff and students from across the entire university, including other stakeholders as well. We received huge amounts of feedback, but we could really take them into 6 key principles and visions that we coined the guided learner journey. And I'll touch on each one very briefly. Paul's already alluded to students wanted to have a consistent delivery of teaching materials to them. They effectively wanted to go to individual module websites and get a similar look and feel for each one. But staff also wanted to retain that flexibility to deliver different pedagogical approaches where it was required. Coupled with that consistent delivery, students wanted to be able to find things, so there's a lot of talk about search. So some of that would be alleviated by a consistent delivery of teaching materials, but likewise we wanted to bring search for both staff and students to be able to find those materials and activities that they needed to engage in. Staff and students both really wanted to see a timeline of the activities, but quite importantly, not just at module level anymore, more at programme level, and we'll come and touch on some of these at a future slide. There was also a need to provide easy access through to resources, whether those be online resources or the library and content services that were provided by our LRC and library colleagues. Staff wanted to easily find and surface those into their learning materials, but then likewise, students wanted to be able to access those on the move and without having any problems around authentication. Students also wanted to be able to supplement those materials that were being given to them by staff, so being able to put their notes alongside the content that had been given by staff and the activities that they were engaged with. They wanted to keep that context. They also wanted to share those notes with their peers, maybe the group work activities that they'd been engaged with. And then finally, students wanted to be able to customise that journey that they were being presented. So by default, staff would presumably kind of do a week-by-week delivery. But maybe as I'm approaching the exams period, I'd like to be able to switch that content on its head and pull out just those things that were key to the exam. So as I could pull out the key revision topics, or maybe those topics that I was looking at from a project point of view. Whilst we came up with those principles and visions from the consultation exercise that we undertook, we wanted to go back out and revalidate and make sure our understanding was quite clear. So what we did within the existing StudyNet was we built a guided learner journey prototype module. 26 live modules went out in the semester B of 2015-16. That involved about 100 members of staff as part of the teaching teams, and there were 2,500 students that received those pilot modules. We went out and we took feedback from both the staff members who'd been involved as well as the students about what were the benefits, what were the things that they were being able to achieve that they hadn't been able to achieve within StudyNet before, and also some of the challenges that were being experienced. We took all that feedback from the consultation exercise, from the guided learner journey prototype modules. We pulled staff and students together from across the institution into a room for one day to distill all that information that we had, and we came up with a very comprehensive tender document. On almost Christmas Eve of 2016, I think, we signed contracts to partner with Canvas and Talis to adopt the guided learner journey and roll that out to staff and students here at the institution, which then led to the next part, which was the rollout and support to migrate.
Thank you, Greg.
What an amazing journey so far, and this is where I come in. I think what's been amazing, just listening actually at the side, this isn't on script for me, but I think it's brought back to me that what we were trying to do when we thought about guided learner journey and we thought about a replacement, if you like, for StudyNet or an evolution of StudyNet was not about it being a technical project at all, about it being something that was about learning, and it was embedded in our DNA, and it came back to me very strongly in the TEF submission that we did 2 years ago and this year. The one we did 2 years ago, we just barely mentioned what we do for learning and teaching and technology-enhanced learning and teaching in that submission. And we learned a lesson from that because we just took it for granted. We thought, everyone does this. This is just normal life, you know. We don't have to tell anyone we do it because it should be obvious that this is what happens. But actually reading other submissions, we thought, hang on, we're doing so much more, so much better, and we haven't even mentioned it because we just take it for granted that this is what we do in this institution. So taking that idea that actually it is about the learning, it's about the pedagogy, and we should be talking about it more, has kind of brought this conference, and it's brought us to this point of what I think is great excitement in the rollout of our new vision for learning using technology-enhanced learning in the university. As Paul keeps alluding to, always learning, and as Sarah mentioned earlier, a digitally capable institution, some of the features of that. I think that's one of the key things that we have tried to embed in the rollout of the guided learner journey, is that whole institution approach and about the support and the approach we've taken to supporting staff in that rollout, which is, I think, has made that initial phase of it quite successful. Some of you will be aware of our training wheel that we put together with our two fantastic StudyNet training coordinators, Lucy and Sam, and the training that they've delivered through a whole suite of different types of support. Every school has their own team of technologists, information managers, e-learning technologists, learning and teaching specialists, and StudyNet champions who are out there on the ground doing office walks, literally knocking on the doors, asking people if they need help, sitting in rooms, welcoming people to drop in. And that presence and that ability to be there and respond when staff need it, when they want the help, and for the particular problems that they're struggling with, I think has been really invaluable. We've also developed a really nice online module, of course, which has embedded in it the principles of the guided learner journey, a good example, good practice. And finally, the stars in my mind of all of this, the student mentors that we've brought on board with us who are out there again, similarly working with staff on a one-to-one basis, and not just helping staff maybe with the technology which they might be struggling with and they're slightly more comfortable with, but it's about how that feels to me as a student. When you're putting your module sites together, what does that feel like for a student? Wouldn't it be better if we did that? And I think those discussions around proper, real, embedded co-creation have been happening in amazing ways as we've been rolling out the guided learner journey. And that's been evident to me in some of the module sites that we've seen today and that are on display up in R110. I'd invite you to go and have a look at some of those. So the student mentors, in my mind, have been key. The students have been so enthusiastic about the rollout. They have taken to it. The feedback that we've been getting is pretty unanimously positive from the students, and I think that shows in the work and dedication that staff have been putting in so far. In terms of engagement, there has been masses of engagement, amazing numbers. I'm not going to read them all out in terms of hours of engagement, in terms of numbers of sessions that we've been running, and that's a testament to enthusiasm of you actually engaging, but also of the team who are going out there and helping put this forward. I just want to dwell on the student mentors and the feedback that we've had about them and from them about their role in all of this. And certainly academic staff have been extremely complimentary around the student mentors and what they've done to help. And again, I won't read it out so much, but this idea of them being really impressive individuals, about being professional and helpful, comes through in all of the feedback that we get. And I'm sure those of you who have used the student mentors would echo that sentiment. The students themselves are loving what they're doing. I think they are really enthusiasts for technology, but enthusiasts for learning as well. And how they're developing as individuals is shining through. And I think that's, again, one of the great benefits of this culture that we've got within the university of co-creation and of a culture and a university that is all about collaboration. And again, came through strongly in our TEF submission. But you look at the sorts of things that students are saying, and interesting, coming back to Sarah's talk this morning, students learning about the digital capabilities of staff. I think students assume certain things, and it's perhaps useful for them to learn about what we are struggling with as much as what they are struggling with as we do our day-to-day jobs. But look at the sorts of skills they're learning. It's not about the technology, it's about patience, it's about diplomacy, it's about interpersonal skills, and all those things that employers are looking for by doing this sort of work. So brilliant benefits for the students in the whole process. This is a journey, as we've said, and this is where we are at this point in time. And it is, in some ways, in my mind, just starting. What I think we've done this year is just lay the bedrock or the foundations for where we really want to go. And this is only, in my mind, the point at which we can really start looking to the future and thinking about what can we do to really change the pedagogy for the better, improve student engagement, improve attainment, and really help them progress into really fantastic careers. And that's what we are moving on to next. I think the engagement with the guided learner journey at module level, and this idea that we think about activities and we structure that learning and we embed good principles in there. And as I say, it's all based on principles. It's not based on a template that we say everyone has to follow. It's about the principles. And as I've seen this morning, and as I've seen on many occasions, there are so many ways that we can do that, which are rich and which are consistent in their concept, but not uniform. And I think that's what's important about that consistency issue. So taking what we've got as foundations and bedrocks and really excellent module sites with those principles embedded, we can now take ourselves to the next step, which is actually then starting to roll out some of those wider principles that we spoke about the whole learner journey for students, about them being able to supplement and add to that journey, and about us continuing to co-create as we continue. And Greg's going to take us through the immediate future, and then Paul's going to come back with something for further ahead.
Thank you, Karen.
I think I pop in again at some point too.
So, I'm really pleased to say that, as Karen had alluded to, Canvas and Tallis really contribute to that delivery of the principles at module level. But from the start of the academic year, this next academic year, so in the very immediate future, we'll be delivering through StudyNet the learning landscape. This is a pulling together of all the topics and units that are delivered from within Canvas. So you can see a whole learning landscape for programmes. Staff will be able to go in and look at their own personal sort of teaching landscape for the modules you're enrolled on. Alternatively, you'll be able to go in and look up a programme and pull together the modules that formulate that programme. And finally, you'll also be able to, where you do personal tutoring support, be able to look up individual students and see their learning landscape as well. So we think this brings a different view of the journey, more at programme level. It also gives quick links through to the Tallis reading list, so you can see what resources are being given. As well as the facilities to export that information to take away to different boards and committees that you might attend. You'll also see at the top right there is the search functionality. This will allow me to search for what topics are being delivered where across my programmes, as I can quickly see where topics are being built upon at different levels. Alongside that, we'll also be introducing the assessment landscape. These icons that you can see spread here are assessment points within Canvas. So very quickly as a programme team, I can see where my assessments are happening by driving that information from Canvas. We also surface up the learning outcomes for each module from the student system, from the TUD database. So here as a programme team, I can quite quickly see the knowledge and understanding and the skills and attributes that are being developed, potentially where they're being assessed by using the assessment landscape, as well as the assessment details from the student system. So this module in particular is 100% coursework. Alongside those learning outcomes, since partnering with Canvas, they've entered quite a collaborative partnership with us. We can see some developments in the future where they're going to start to attach learning outcomes to individual activities within Canvas or at that topic unit structure as well. And we'd like to surface those going forward within the programme level view. So as I say, that programme level view will be coming out in the next sort of 6 or 7 weeks for the start of the academic year. It will be a first release. We've had lots of feedback from programme teams that we've been out and spoken to from across the university, and we'll iteratively start to build upon that functionality that gets released. By having that programme landscape and the kind of activities that students might be engaging with and where the learning outcomes are developed, etc., I think that leads very nicely into data and learner analytics, which Karen's going to come back in on.
Yeah, you may remember that we had sent out some invitations to what we were calling this year the Conference Fringe. So for the first year, we ran a whole day pre-conference workshop where staff and students collaborated together and around a topic related to the conference itself. And that topic this year we decided was going to be on data and analytics for student learning and student engagement. And it led very well into what the future developments in terms of the future online learning environment, what we're going to be in any case. So we had a fantastic day. 60 people or so engaged for the whole day over in the Students' Union, finishing off with a barbecue. We had amazingly creative sessions, and I'm shortly going to play a little video just showing you a summary of what that did. But you'll have seen out in the foyer examples of the products, the end products of that day in terms of data visualizations and what would help student engagement and learning going forward from the various teams who culminated in that project at the end of the day. It was a fantastic event. We managed to actually accost 2 students in the Students' Union to come and judge the outputs of the day along with Sal Jarvis, and I think we had a really good buzz and feeling. But more importantly, we got really excellent, really rich, brilliant data that we are currently trying to accumulate, gather, understand, and bring together to help inform how we use data analytics to supplement, to help students in that learning journey. And I'm just going to show the video briefly, if we could, please. Yeah, thank you. Which will give you a flavour of what went on.
So today is part of our pre-conference event. So this year's annual Learning Teaching Conference is all about technology enhanced learning. So we thought we'd have a pre-conference event to think about learning data. So we've got staff and students from all around the university who've come today as a creative and exploration day to think about what students might want from data to help support their learning, but also different stakeholders, so staff, external stakeholders. So we'll be working throughout the day to think about what current data streams we have, what new data streams we might need, and then importantly at the end of the day, how we might be able to visualise that data so it really works for our students.
Thank you. And so that's almost the start of another bit of the journey for us. And I'm going to hand on to Paul to finalise about where we think part of that future lies. And we'll also be taking very realistically the data and everything that we produced from that particular day into Seek, away day that's coming up in the next couple of weeks, and into next year's work as we roll out the next parts of the journey. Over to you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. The next bit, ignore everything you see. None of it's real. It's all mirrors, because it's concepts. We're thinking about the future, we're thinking about where we can go, and we're thinking about what the future StudyNet will be. So a lot of people come up to me and go, oh, Canvas is replacing StudyNet. StudyNet was never a virtual learning environment. It was the environment. It was, at the time, they called them managed learning environments. It was the idea that everything's in one place. Library, everything was there. We still like that concept. We want students to go into one place where they can get everything. So that's still what we're working to. Canvas will deliver a part of it. Callus delivers a part of it, but Office 365 and lots of other applications become part of the mix as we move forward. And it's how do we achieve that and what do we achieve? And how do we achieve this guided learner journey? How do we help the students think about the context of learning, understand what they're doing, reflect, improve reflection, improve what they want to do with their life, and not just game it. What was interesting, the reason I haven't moved on is the students picked this model, learner analytics model here. It may look just like a bunch of lines, and it is. And what the students said was all these other models were looking at lifelong learning, how to improve every aspect of you. And sadly, our students picked this one, which was, how do I just get a first? And what we've got to do is build a system that helps them get a first, helps them improve, but also helps them be everything they could be. So, how am I going to build that, and how are you going to be part of that? Don't know. So, this is what we're talking about. How do we think about information across the university differently? How do we stop thinking about it in silos? How do we stop thinking about it as a resource? How do we think about it supporting activities, the learning activities you're putting into the guided learner journey? How do we take that and then surface that information that, say, the library are producing on Harvard referencing? How do we get that to the student at the right point? You're going to tell us when you're teaching and what the teaching is and what the activities are. Therefore, we're going to use that. We're going to use the analytics. We're going to use that to surface the students. So this is two simple examples. It's me at the back, in a back of the fag packet in a modern way, type way, with a bit of application, throwing some stuff on the page going, that'll be it for a design. I'd have drawn this with paper 10 years ago. Now I do it on the screen. But the idea is that we surface the guided learner journey in their face. This is what you're doing. This is what we're expecting from. This is what you're expecting to do. But then we're surfacing the other things that are intangible. So I've picked one out, like, if we're saying to you, do your reading lists, we can buy the books for you, but also you're telling the students how important that book is. Well, you want the students to access that book. If a student isn't accessing that book, that's an analytic that we can surface. So here's a little nagging message to help a first-year student understand the importance of reading, to say, actually, the students in your cohort are now accessing that book. They're going to the library, they're borrowing the book. Why don't you borrow it? So that's the concepts we're taking in, that if we create a resource, we know what its purpose is and how it's connected to the learning activity. So, for example, if we want to build and improve reflection in our students, well, why don't we build a reflective cycle around all our assignments across the university so that the system will encourage reflection, build a portfolio of reflection up over their life in the university, but it's tagged against the learning outcomes so they can go back and reflect and see where they've picked things up. So that's where we want to get to. We still want to get the news, we still want all those other facilities, but it'll work across mobile and web. Mobile opens a completely different picture, though. So yes, we're going to find ways of focusing information. But what mobile does is, actually, this is just a zoomed-in version of what I was talking about. What mobile does is it allows us to use locations. So everyone who's got a mobile phone, hands up. Who's got a smartphone? Who hasn't got a smartphone? Everyone, one or two. We're not monitoring you. Everyone else, we know you're in here. Because at some point you've engaged with the university with your phone or with your computer. So wireless knows you're in this room. And what people are doing elsewhere is starting to use wireless to allow you to deliver contextual services. So for example, if I'm a student, I've just walked into B154 and I'm timetabled, why doesn't the application just say, well, do you want me to check you in? We can do it. We can do it now. But not only that, it knows what I'm timetabled against, it knows what you've put into Canvas for that session. Why doesn't it just go and get those files and actually put them straight in the mobile for them? So they don't have to go and look for them. So this is where we're talking about search, but it's a much more intelligent search than previous. It's clearly a search, but it's contextual. You walk into the room, your lectern screen and your mobile goes, oh, welcome, you're teaching. By the way, we've changed the lectern. There's a guide for it. Actually, it'll be more intelligent than that. It will tell you a week beforehand because it'll know you and it'll email you before. That's where we want to get to. But then it's got things like, I've put some notes up for the program team to say, can you make sure the students are aware of this? So it's put it up there and says, well, make sure the students know this. So the program leader may be able to then get that message out. It may just put the class list up so you can see it's the right people in front of you, and you're not standing lecturing the people you weren't expecting to. I hope that never happens. But you never know. It seems to be the other way around. So those are the kind of things we want to think about. Location, context. So walking to the LRC, it tells me the sessions that's happening at the time, it tells me what's busy, so it moves the information from somewhere in the system to me. And that's where what we want to get to. Stuff like Food Harvester, I'm sure they'll want to get involved, but we don't want it to be marketing. So they can come later. This is all getting recorded, by the way, so, But where we are is we want to support the learning. We no doubt will end up doing stuff for the rest of the university, but learning is the priority in the first few years. But think about time. Time changes. You log into StudyNet, it's StudyNet. If I log into StudyNet during induction, it should be an induction StudyNet. If I log in during exam times, it should be the exams StudyNet. So time as well. We've got to think about how we connect resources to time, the people, the activities. So that's the new model we're doing. We haven't got an idea how to deliver it yet, but that's the model we're definitely doing. And just one last slide. So this is obviously the Vice-Chancellor's page. He'll have his own page. But it's important because what we're calling this level is a perspective level, where you will be able to construct a perspective that pulls information for your perspective into one place. So this might be a program level view. It could be anything. It might be a student support view. But the idea is that these can be built from information. Instead of the information being posted to the OVC website or to learning information, Learning Information Services, remember that, sorry. It's all this going back in the past. A Library and Computing Services website, it's posted neutrally. It's posted so that it gets surfaced to the right place. So these are the concepts we're thinking about. Eventually, I want to fix this little problem. See this search at the top. How do I hand in my assignment? How many results do you think that returns? I'll actually give some people the answers this morning. 8,000 results on StudyNet. StudyNet indexes using a Google search appliance, Google search appliance, Google, good search, Google. 8,000 pages from the million indexes. So clearly, search isn't going to fix the problem. We have to think about the information we want to go into that search. And it's much better to have a much more reduced set of information that we know answers the questions the students are asking, rather than indexing everything. And that's going to be the other model, that from now on we'll be thinking about reducing the type of things we'll allow the search to do so that it's much more constrained and we'll always have answers. And you could walk up to Alexa in a room and go, Alexa, how do I hand my assignment in? And he goes, well, you're an engineering student. Here's the information for engineering. And that goes out. So it's not me finding it amongst 8,000 pages. And those are the concepts. Don't know how we're going to deliver it, but those are the concepts, and we're going to come out to you in the next few months to try and find out how it might work for you and how you might deliver this and help us deliver it. Essentially, if you want to already contribute, here's a URL. You note that down. I've tweeted it already on the StudyNet hashtag and the conference hashtag. So if you want to contribute ideas, we're asking for your view of what you want as a producer and what you want as a consumer of information. So that we get to this, which is a user-centric StudyNet, not a StudyNet that we produce, a StudyNet that they produce. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful story of where we've come from and also to where we're going. We've got a few minutes for questions, so we'll try with the catch boxes again. You get that pleasure. Karen, you get that pleasure. Greg, I'm sure it will come back. So, any questions for Karen, Greg, and Paul? Danny does. There we go. No pressure, Karen.
Wow.
Hiya. Thanks for that. I find it really interesting, especially seeing where you want this to go to. My concern is that we are getting to a point where we're doing far too much for our students. I don't mean that in a very horrible way. Obviously, we're here to support our students. But are we going to get to a point where we're doing too much for them we're just expecting them to hand in an assignment, and we're giving them everything, and we're trying to promote autonomous learners and adult learners and people that are going to be able to do things for themselves when they leave the institution. It just concerns me that we're giving them too much.
Can I pick this up? How many people are first generation students? So, how many of us were in class sizes of 600-700?
Yeah.
So, first generation students don't often know the context of what it is they're meant to be doing. They don't, in big class sizes, necessarily build up the networks that helps them understand what they need to do. So, bare minimum we should be doing for any working class student like myself who came in not knowing what university was, scared, we've got to help them. It was fine when I went to university and I had a personal tutor, but that's not there now. So a system, or what we do in the first year or so, can help students understand the context of what it is they're meant to be achieving, to help them want to achieve more. Second and third year, I completely agree, but first year, if we don't do it, they're going to be in debt for 30 years with £50,000–60,000. What you're saying is, should we make it more difficult for them? That's the worry that I keep hearing. As a working class graduate, I find it horrific. I wouldn't go to university now, and if I did, I'd want you to help me achieve the most I can. And that's what everything I put into every system I do is how can I help an individual student? I don't teach, but I can help you help them. And just giving them the context might allow them to achieve a little bit more, might encourage them to engage with the students' uni, might encourage them to do and get that thing that defines the rest of their life. It's one opportunity in their life. Second and third year, I completely agree, but first year, I think we have to help them a lot.
I was going to say, I don't think it's about giving them too much. I think it's about guiding them through the muchness that's there already. I think that that's part of the problem. Is one of the issues we had in the feedback with StudyNet, as it had grown and it had evolved, had become a place where things were put, and there was so much information, nothing could be found. There wasn't clear how you did things or where you went to get information or advice or read lecture notes or whatever. What this is the basis of is saying, we'll help guide you. In fact, we'll scaffold it quite a bit in the early stages where you need more help, and we'll reduce that scaffolding as you need it less. But there will be ways of navigating your way through what's a really complicated system that we know about, but of classes, of online stuff, of library books, of social life, everything. I don't think it's about giving them too much. I think it's about helping them and giving them feedback around what's working for them and what's not working for them. So it's not general feedback that everybody who reads that textbook gets a first. It's when you've read that textbook along with doing that activity and so on, that has actually helped improve your engagement or performance. So again, it's about putting them at the centre and saying all this is happening, but we need to sort it a bit for you and help you with it and help you get through it and engage you more with your learning rather than make it a jungle that you can't really see your way through.
Another question.
And I'm not chucking it.
There we go.
All right.
Oh,
yeah, good, yes.
Okay, my question is, often we have videos maybe of lectures like 2 hours, and most students would find the videos of 2 hours difficult to interact with, and that often may discourage them to come back. Now with this new system, what opportunities will be there for lecturers to turn their PowerPoints into interactive content, so that maybe if I only need to look at the topic one, I only go to that slide rather than looking at the whole video?
Yeah, I think again that it is about rethinking the pedagogy. As I said, it was a teaching and learning, a pedagogy project. It wasn't about technology. It wasn't about let's put lecture capture in all the rooms or let's use EVS everywhere. It wasn't about that. It was about putting together the concept on the print and the principles around what we see effective blended learning to be, and then what tools would be appropriate and what pedagogy we could use alongside that infrastructure and the tools to provide the best learning environment. And as I've said, the examples I've seen already of module sites are not uniform at all, but they have underlying principles which are pedagogic principles, and they work because the people who've put them together have thought about that, and they have actually created something with appropriate technologies, appropriate ways of learning and teaching, and appropriate resources alongside it. And I think that's the way we want to go and keep that idea and keep that moving.
I think the other thing to bring in is, Karen mentioned the learning analytics, and we can do analytics and we can guess the learning from the data. What we can't do is say this was what the learning was meant to be, and therefore here's analytics that help you. And the more you define about what your expectations are of the students, and the more you can break things down, and the more you're clear about what it is you're trying to achieve, we can give you the data and the activities to say, I thought this, did the students do this? If they don't, then that's standard teaching. How do I adapt my teaching to deal with that? If that doesn't work, I can move on and change it. It's about potentially giving you access to information about how your students are doing much earlier. You know, the idea that, I'm going to use Greg here, the idea that you get to the end of the first year, you do an assessment, and then you get the assessment feedback after you've done the exam, hasn't helped you develop any idea of how the student's achieving unless you've put some other activities in place. And that's what we want to get to. We want to get to the point where you're breaking things down, thinking about the student's engagement, then we're giving the evidence of the engagement. Has that worked? Can we refer? Can we change? Can we adapt it, do adaptive learning? And that's where we need to get to. It's a long, long vision. This isn't 1, 2 years. This is 5, 10 years. I was asked by the Pro VC the other week, how long would this take? I said, 5 years. And he went, what? Yeah, 5 years. You know, that's the reality of these things. It's not a short development.
Okay, I'm going to pause us there because we've got a whole programme for the rest of the afternoon, but I would just like to say a huge thank you to Karen. Thank you
very
so much.
Thank you very much.
To Paul.
Thank you.
Greg.
Thank you.
I think it was such an inspirational talk to think where we've come from and where we're going. And personally, I am so proud to work at a university where we have this leadership, this expertise, and this forward thinking. And I can't wait to see where we go. Next then, it's time for you to do a little bit of learning, #alwayslearning. Go and explore something new. So go to one of the rooms, find out about something you haven't done before, try out a technology you've never used before, go and see some of the guided learning journey exemplars that we've got within the university. After that, there'll be a refreshment break, and then we're all back here at 3:30. So I will see you then.